Hashtag why aliens discover humans are the true apex predators of the galaxy. The Galactic Council chambers had never been so quiet. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire slowly placed his four-clawed hands on the crystalline table, his blue-scaled face showing confusion that bordered on terror. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 12 different species sat in stunned silence, their various forms of breathing creating an eerie symphony of whistles, gurgles, and mechanical hums. Replay the transmission, Kethvar commanded, his translator device converting his native clicks into standard galactic common. The holographic display activated again, showing the same devastating footage that had arrived from the Outer Rim territories just 3 standard hours ago. The recording came from a hegemony patrol ship that had been investigating reports of unknown vessels in the contested Rigel sector. Contact established with unknown species. The hegemony captain's voice echoed through the chamber. They call themselves humans. Bipedal, carbon-based, apparently from a world they designate as Earth. Initial scans suggest they are a peaceful trading vessel. The hologram showed the human ship, a modest craft, nothing impressive by galactic standards. It was smaller than most hegemony destroyers and showed none of the aggressive design elements that marked warrior cultures. The beings visible through the viewports appeared soft, weak even, with no visible natural weapons or armor. We have agreed to escort them to Outpost Gamma 7 for standard first contact protocols, the captain continued. They seem eager to establish trade relations. Ambassador Ketvar's tail twitched nervously. He knew what came next in the recording, but the implications were so vast that his mind still refused to accept them. What happened to the hegemony fleet? Asked Counselor Yathera, her insectoid form clicking anxiously. The transmission cuts off for nearly 6 standard hours. Keep watching, Kethvar replied grimly. The hologram flickered, then resumed with a timestamp showing the gap Yathera had mentioned. When the image cleared, it showed the same sector of space, but everything had changed. Where once 3 hegemony heavy cruisers had flanked the human vessel, now there was only debris. Twisted metal, frozen atmosphere crystals, and the scattered remains of what had been some of the most powerful warships in the galaxy. The human ship hung in space, apparently undamaged. By the sacred cores, whispered Teclon, the mechanical representative of the synthetic collective. How did they destroy 3 hegemony cruisers? The humans showed no weapons signatures, no energy spikes, nothing that would indicate military capability. The recording continued with a new voice, human this time, speaking in accented galactic common. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the U.S. Discovery to any vessels receiving this transmission. We were forced to defend ourselves when the escort ships opened fire without warning. We attempted peaceful resolution, but when they targeted our civilian transport, we had no choice but to respond with appropriate force. Appropriate force. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. 3 of the most advanced warships in known space had been reduced to scrap metal, and the humans called it appropriate force. Surely there must be some mistake, said Counselor Brixtel, his gaseous form shimmering with uncertainty inside his containment suit. Perhaps these humans have allies we don't know about. Hidden fleets, advanced weapon platforms. Kethvar activated another section of the recording. This one came from the hegemony's automated sensor networks throughout the sector. The data was clear and terrifying. Only the human ship had been present during the engagement. No hidden flyets, no veapon platforms, no mysterious allies. The temporal analysis is what concerns me most, Kethvar continued. From a moment the hegemony ships opened fire to their complete destruction was exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. That's faster than most species can even charge their primary weapons. A collective shudder ran through the chamber. The hegemony were not a species to be taken lightly. Their military doctrine had dominated 2 spiral arms of the galaxy for over 3,000 years. Their ships were designed by the finest military engineers, their weapons capable of glassing entire planets. The idea that a single unknown vessel could destroy 3 of their cruisers in less than 5 minutes challenged everything the galactic community thought they knew about warfare. Perhaps, suggested Thera carefully, we should examine what we know about these humans more closely. Kethvar nodded and, activated the intelligence summary that had been hastily compiled over the past several hours. According to long-range surveys, Earth is located in what we've designated as Sector 7G Prime, approximately 27,000 light-years from galactic center. The system appears unremarkable: single yellow star, several rocky planets, some gas giants. The planet Earth itself shows signs of a developing civilization. Developing? Teclon's optical sensors focused sharply. You mean they're not even space-capable? That's what makes this so disturbing, Kethvar replied. According to our deep-range scans from 50 years ago, humans had barely achieved powered flight. Their technology level was consistent with pre-spaceflight civilizations. Yet somehow, they've not only reached interstellar capability, but have developed weapons that can destroy our most advanced warships. The chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. 50 years was nothing in galactic terms, barely a blink of an eye for most species. The idea that any civilization could advance from primitive aircraft to starship-killing weapons in such a short time was unprecedented. "We need more information," declared Yathera. "I propose we dispatch a diplomatic mission to make formal contact with this human government." "Absolutely not," Kethvar said firmly. "Until we understand what we're dealing with, no council vessels should approach human space. The hegemony made that mistake, and we've seen the results." "Then what do you propose?" asked Brixtel. Kethvar's claws tapped against the table as he considered their options. "We monitor. We observe. We gather intelligence from a safe distance. And we do not, under any circumstances, give these humans any reason to consider us a threat." "You're suggesting we treat them as a hostile force based on one incident?" Teclon's voice carried a note of disbelief. "I'm suggesting we treat them as an unknown quantity with demonstrated capability to destroy our ships," Kethvar corrected. "The hegemony thought they were dealing with primitives too. Now their fleet is space debris." The discussion was interrupted by an urgent chime from the communications console. Kethvar activated it, and the face of Commander Vextar from Galactic Intelligence appeared on screen. "Ambassador, we have a situation," Vextar reported. "Long-range sensors have detected multiple human vessels leaving their home system. They're spreading out across several vectors, and their speed is concerning." "How concerning?" Kethvar asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. "They're traveling at velocities that should be impossible without causing fatal acceleration forces to organic crew members. Yet our bioscanners confirm living beings aboard all vessels. Either they've developed gravity compensation technology beyond anything we possess, or what? Itara demanda. Or they're naturally capable of surviving forces that would liquefy most known species." The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations and nervous chatter. Kethvar called for order, but his mind was racing. First impossible weapons, now impossible endurance. What exactly were these humans? "Commander, how many vessels are we tracking?" he asked. 17 so far, but the numbers keep growing. They appear to be launching new ships every few hours. At this rate, they'll have explored half the local spiral arm within a standard year. Kethvar felt his scales darken with worry. "Have any of them shown hostile intent?" "That's what makes this even more disturbing," Vextar replied. "Every ship we've observed has responded to scanner contacts with what appears to be friendly communication attempts. They seem genuinely interested in peaceful contact. But, Ambassador, their very presence is having unexpected effects." "What kind of effects?" "Wildlife on monitoring stations goes silent when human ships pass nearby. Predatory species that normally show aggression toward unknown vessels instead flee or hide. It's as if every living thing instinctively recognizes these humans as a threat, even when they're not being threatening." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. In galactic civilization, there was a well-understood principle that predatory species could sense danger from other predators. It was an ancient survival instinct that evolution had refined over millions of years. If creatures throughout space were instinctively fleeing from humans, it suggested something about their nature that terrified Kethvar to contemplate. "Commander, continue monitoring, but maintain maximum distance from all human vessels. Share this data with all council members immediately." "Understood, Ambassador. There's one more thing." "Yes. We intercepted some of their internal communications. They're excited about meeting new species. They have entire cultural protocols planned for peaceful first contact. They've even prepared gift packages of their art and music to share with any civilizations they encounter. Kethvar's blood ran cold. The humans were actively seeking contact with other species, spreading across the galaxy with impossible speed and unstoppable weapons, while simultaneously planning peaceful cultural exchanges. They were either the most sophisticated hunters in galactic history, or they genuinely didn't understand the effect they were having. Thank you, Commander. That will be all. As the transmission ended, Kethvar looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. Fear was written clearly across every alien face, whether scaled, chitinous, or mechanical. What are we dealing with? Itara whispered. Kethvar activated the holographic display one more time, showing the debris field where 3 hegemony cruisers had once patrolled. I don't know, he admitted, but I have a terrible feeling we're about to find out. The discovery of humanity had changed everything. In less than a single day, the galactic balance of power had shifted in ways no one could predict. The only certainty was that the age of known civilization was ending, and the age of human expansion had begun. Whether that would mean salvation or extinction for the rest of the galaxy remained to be seen. The research station Kepler-9 orbited a dead world at the edge of what galactic charts designated as the Terra Nullius region. Dr. Zexai had chosen this location specifically for its isolation, far from shipping lanes, military patrols, and the prying censors of the Galactic Council. For the past 6 months, she had been conducting the most dangerous research project of her career. She was studying humans. Her laboratory was a maze of displays showing intercepted transmissions, biological data, and tactical analyses. The walls were covered with star charts tracking human expansion, each new red dot representing another vessel spreading deeper into the galaxy. The pattern was both beautiful and terrifying, like watching a biological infection spread across healthy tissue. Computer, display analysis summary for human specimens, Zexai commanded, her 6 arms manipulating different control interfaces simultaneously. Warning, information classified as potentially dangerous to galactic stability. The computer replied in its emotionless synthetic voice. Override. Authorization Zexai Alpha 77. Override accepted. Displaying human analysis. The main screen filled with data that would have caused panic throughout civilized space if anyone else had access to it. Zexai had been collecting information about humans for months, piecing together a picture that defied everything science understood about evolution and civilization. Physical analysis flashed across the top of the screen. Below it, a 3-dimensional model of a human rotated slowly, with various systems highlighted in different colors. Bone density 40% higher than galactic average for bipedal species, Zexai read aloud, her voice filled with scientific fascination and growing dread. Muscle fiber efficiency rated at 93% optimal, highest recorded for any known organic species. Cardiovascular system capable of sustaining extreme performance under stress conditions that would cause cardiac failure in most galactic citizens. She paused at the next section, having read it dozens of times without fully accepting its implications. Healing rate, accelerated by factor of 12 compared to baseline organic species. Immune system, hyperactive to the point of aggression. Pain threshold, effectively limitless under adrenaline surge conditions. The data was unprecedented. Humans weren't just tough, they were built like living weapons. Every system in their bodies was optimized for survival in conditions that would kill most other species. But that wasn't the worst part. Computer, display neurological analysis. The human brain model appeared, with various regions pulsing in different colors as the computer highlighted active areas. Zexai's tentacles curled with anxiety as she reviewed findings that challenged every assumption about intelligence and consciousness. Cognitive processing speed, variable, ranging from baseline normal to 40 times galactic standard under stress conditions. Memory retention, near perfect for survival-relevant information. Problem-solving capability, exponentially increases under pressure. But the real horror was in the next section. Ethical framework, tribal-based with expanding circle of protection, capable of extreme violence toward perceived threats while simultaneously showing unprecedented compassion for protected individuals. Warning. Humans demonstrate ability to instantly reclassify entire species from protected to threat based on behavioral analysis. Zexai sat back in her chair, her breathing apparatus working overtime. She had been studying galactic species for over 2 centuries, and she had never encountered anything like humans. They were walking contradictions, capable of incredible kindness and unimaginable brutality, often within the same individual. Her research had uncovered intercepted communications from human vessels exploring the galaxy. The conversations revealed beings who were genuinely excited about meeting new species, who had already developed extensive protocols for peaceful contact, who brought gifts and cultural exchanges to share with anyone they met. The same communications also contained casual discussions of weapon systems that could crack planets and military doctrines that treated the complete elimination of threats as standard procedure. Computer, play audio file, human intercept 447. The speakers filled with human voices speaking in their rapid, efficient language. Zexai had learned enough human linguistics to follow basic conversations, and this one never failed to send chills through her exoskeleton. Captain, we're approaching the hegemony contact point. Should I prepare the diplomatic package? Absolutely, Jenkins. Full cultural exchange protocol. Art, music, literature. Let's show them the best of humanity. Understood, Mom. Should I also prep the defensive systems? Standard protocol. Shields ready, weapons online, but power down. If they show any sign of hostility toward our diplomatic mission, we go to total war footing immediately. Define total war footing for the scenario. Complete elimination of all threats within a 50 light-year radius. We can't allow word of human capabilities to spread if they prove hostile. Too much risk to Earth and the colonies. The casual tone in which they discussed galactic genocide was what terrified Zexai most. These weren't bloodthirsty monsters plotting conquest. They were ordinary individuals following standard procedures that happened to include the potential annihilation of entire star systems. Her computer chimed with an incoming priority transmission. Zexai accepted it, and the worried face of her research partner, Dr. Kleintek, appeared on screen. Zexai, you need to see this immediately. The humans have made contact with the Serene Republic. Zexai's heart skipped several beats. The Serene Republic was one of the oldest and most peaceful civilizations in the galaxy. If the humans had encountered them, it could provide crucial data about human behavior during first contact. Send me the data stream, she commanded. It's happening right now. Live transmission from the border systems. The screen split to show a real-time feed from a Serene Republic monitoring station. In the center of the image hung 2 ships, elegant, crystalline vessel of serene design, and a blocky, utilitarian human craft. The contrast was striking. The Serene ship looked like a work of art, all flowing curves and beautiful proportions. The human ship looked like it had been designed by someone who had never heard of aesthetics, but cared deeply about functionality. Audio feed is coming through now, Kleintek reported. The conversation between the 2 species was everything the galactic community could have hoped for in a first contact scenario. The Serene Republic representatives were speaking in their famously melodious language, expressing joy at meeting a new species and offering to share their accumulated wisdom and culture. The humans responded with equal enthusiasm, their translator working overtime to convey their excitement about meeting such an ancient and peaceful civilization. They offered gifts, asked questions about serene art and philosophy, and seemed genuinely honored to make contact. This is wonderful, Zexai whispered. Perhaps we misjudged them. Perhaps they really are as peaceful as they appear. Then, something changed in the conversation. The Serene representative mentioned that they were surprised humans had developed space travel so quickly, noting that their records showed human civilization achieving flight only 50 years ago. How do you have records of our development? The human captain asked, and there was something different in his tone. Oh, we maintain monitoring stations throughout the galaxy to observe developing species. We've been watching Earth for several centuries, waiting for you to achieve spaceflight so we can make contact. Silence stretched across the communication channel for nearly 30 seconds. When the human captain spoke again, his voice was completely different, cold, calculating, dangerous. You've been watching us for centuries without making contact? studying us like laboratory specimens. Yes, but with the best intentions. We wanted to ensure you were ready for galactic civilization before you observe our species through wars, plagues, famines, and natural disasters, and you never offered assistance. The serene representative seemed confused by the hostility in the human's voice. Interference with developing species is forbidden by galactic law. We couldn't interfere with your natural evolution. Natural evolution. The human captain repeated the words like they tasted poisonous. Computer, how many human beings have died in the past century from causes that this species could have prevented with their advanced technology? Calculating. Approximately 47 million deaths from disease, famine, and natural disasters that could have been prevented with serene Republic technology. Zexhai watched in growing horror as the mood of the entire encounter shifted. She could see the human ship's weapon systems powering up on the serene monitoring displays. Captain, please understand, we meant no harm, the serene representative pleaded. It is our way to allow species to develop naturally. We never intended 47 million people, the human captain interrupted. You sat in your crystal ships and watched 47 million human beings die when you could have saved them. And you call that peaceful. We followed galactic law. We couldn't interfere. Your law, not ours. Computer, classify the Serene Republic as hostile to human interests. Classification complete. Standing by for orders. The transmission cut off abruptly. Within minutes, long-range sensors detected the complete destruction of the Serene monitoring station. The ancient, beautiful crystalline ship was simply gone, reduced to component atoms by weapons that left no trace of their mechanism. Zexhai stared at the empty space where the station had been, her mind struggling to process what she had just witnessed. The humans had committed genocide against one of the most peaceful species in the galaxy because they had failed to intervene in human development. Kleintech, are you getting additional reports? 7 more Serene Republic stations have gone dark in the past hour. The humans appear to be systematically hunting down every monitoring post they can find. Zexhai's research suddenly took on a new and terrible urgency. The humans weren't just physically dangerous. They had a completely alien moral framework that could justify mass murder as a reasonable response to perceived neglect. Computer, emergency analysis. Based on all available data, predict human response to the discovery of widespread galactic surveillance. Warning, analysis suggests catastrophic scenarios. Humans demonstrate pattern of total elimination of perceived threats to their species. If they discover the extent of galactic monitoring and non-interference protocols, probability of systematic extermination campaigns exceeds 90%. The screen filled with projections that made Zexhai's blood freeze. Star maps showing the systematic elimination of every major galactic civilization. Population centers being destroyed, not out of malice, but as a logical response to what humans would perceive as criminal negligence on a galactic scale. Her computer chimed again with an incoming message from galactic intelligence. The text was brief and terrifying. All monitoring of human space has been compromised. Human vessels are actively hunting our observation posts using technology that should not exist. Estimate 60% of our intelligence network in that sector will be eliminated within 72 hours. Recommend immediate evacuation of all personnel to minimum safe distance of 500 light-years. Zexhai realized with growing panic that her own research station was probably on the human target list. She had been intercepting their communications, analyzing their biology, and tracking their movements for months. If they discovered Kepler-9, they would classify her as a hostile surveillance operative and respond accordingly. She began frantically uploading her research to hidden storage nodes throughout the galaxy while simultaneously preparing the station's emergency evacuation protocols. The data had to survive even if she didn't. Galactic civilization needed to understand what they were facing. As she worked, her sensors detected a new contact at the edge of the system. A human ship had just emerged from hyperspace and was heading directly toward Kepler-9. Somehow, they had found her. The evacuation alarm screamed through Dr. Zexhai's research station as she frantically uploaded the last of her data files to the secure quantum storage network. Her 6 arms moved across multiple control panels simultaneously, executing emergency protocols that should have taken hours in mere minutes. The approaching human vessel was still 12 hours away at its current speed, but Zexai had learned enough about human capabilities to know that 12 hours might as well be 12 minutes. Computer, confirm data, upload completion, she commanded while simultaneously activating the station's self-destruct sequence. Upload complete. All research files successfully distributed to 7 secure nodes across the galaxy. Warning. Incoming vessel has increased velocity by 300%. Estimated arrival time, now 47 minutes. Zexai's tentacles went rigid with terror. No known ship could accelerate that rapidly without liquefying its organic crew. Either humans had developed inertial dampening technology beyond anything in galactic science, or their biology was even more impossible than her research had suggested. She abandoned her remaining equipment and rushed toward the escape pods, but her scientific mind couldn't help but continue analyzing even in the face of death. The human response pattern was becoming clearer with each encounter. They weren't random killers or mindless conquerors. They were systematic, efficient, and utterly ruthless in eliminating what they perceived as threats to their species. The escape pod launched just as her sensors detected something that made her question her own sanity. The approaching human ship wasn't alone anymore. Somehow, 3 additional vessels had appeared from nowhere. No hyperspace signatures, no energy trails, nothing to indicate how they had arrived. As her pod fled toward the nearest inhabited system, Zexai watched through the rear sensors as Kepler-9 was methodically dismantled. The humans didn't simply destroy her research station. They analyzed it, cataloged every piece of equipment, and systematically removed all traces of its existence. Within an hour, the entire facility had been reduced to its component atoms and scattered across local space. The efficiency was terrifying. More terrifying was the implication that humans were not only hunting surveillance posts, but studying them to understand galactic technology and capabilities. 3 days later, Zexai found herself in the emergency session chamber of the Galactic Council, presenting her findings to an audience of terrified alien representatives. The chamber was packed beyond capacity, with delegates from species she had never seen before appearing via hologram from across the galaxy. "The situation has deteriorated beyond our worst projections," she reported, her voice amplified throughout the chamber. "Human expansion has accelerated exponentially. They're not just exploring anymore. They're actively hunting down every species that has been observing them." Ambassador Kethvar activated a galactic display that showed the current tactical situation. Red dots indicated human vessels, blue dots showed known alien outposts, and yellow indicators marked recent battle sites. The pattern was unmistakable and horrifying. In 72 hours, humans have eliminated 16 monitoring stations, 3 diplomatic outposts, and 1 military patrol, Kethvar reported. But they haven't attacked a single civilian vessel or settlement. They seem to be targeting only government and military installations. That suggests intelligence and planning. Observe Counselor Yathera. They're not randomly violent. They have specific objectives. My research confirms this. Humans operate on what they call a threat assessment protocol. They categorize other species as either neutral, protected, or hostile based on actions, not intentions. The problem is that most of our standard first contact procedures automatically classify us as hostile by their standards. How so? Demanded General Korksvar of the hegemony, his mechanical voice crackling with static. Surveillance without consent is considered a hostile act by human standards. Non-interference during species-threatening events is considered criminal negligence. Any action that results in human casualties, even unintentionally, triggers what they call proportional response protocols. The chamber erupted in agitated conversation. Counselor Brickstell's gaseous form shimmered with distress. But those are standard galactic practices. We've been following those protocols for thousands of years. Humans don't care about our traditions, Zexai replied. They judge actions by results, not intentions. From their perspective, we've been complicit in the deaths of millions of their species through deliberate inaction. That's barbaric, shouted someone from the back of the chamber. No, Zexai said quietly, and her tone made everyone fall silent. It's logical. I've analyzed thousands of human communications, and their moral framework is actually quite consistent. They protect what they consider innocent with fanatical devotion, and they eliminate threats with equal dedication. The problem is that their definition of innocent and threat doesn't match ours. Ambassador Kethvar activated a new display showing intercepted human communications. Dr. Zexhai, please explain what we learned from the New Geneva incident. Zexhai felt her organs clench with remember horror. 73 hours ago, a human colony ship designated New Geneva encountered a Drakmarian slave raid in progress. The Drakmarians had captured approximately 400 Ventari civilians for processing into their labor camps. She paused, knowing that what came next would shock even this assembly of hardened diplomats and military leaders. The human response was immediate. They didn't attempt negotiation or contact their government for instructions. The colony ship, which our intelligence indicated was a civilian vessel with minimal defenses, destroyed the entire Drakmarian fleet in 11 minutes. How many ships? General Korksvar asked. 47 Drakmarian vessels, including 3 dreadnoughts and a command carrier. Total Drakmarian casualties, approximately 12,000 personnel. The silence in the chamber was absolute. The Drakmarian Empire was one of the galaxy's major military powers. Their fleets feared throughout 3 spiral arms. The idea that a single civilian ship could eliminate 47 warships was beyond comprehension. But here's what's truly terrifying, Zexhai continued. The humans then spent 6 hours providing medical care to the rescued Ventari. They shared food, medicine, and temporary shelter. They comforted traumatized children and treated wounded civilians with what the Ventari described as infinite compassion. The same beings who had just committed mass murder were simultaneously showing unprecedented kindness to the victims. The Ventari delegation has formally requested protection from humanity, calling them the guardian angels of the galaxy. Counselor Yathura's insectoid features twisted with confusion. How can they be both saviors and destroyers? Because they're apex predators, Zexhai explained. My biological analysis confirms it. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on a death world that killed 99% of species that attempted to colonize it. They're designed to be pack hunters capable of incredible violence, but their pack protection instinct extends to any species they classify as innocent. She activated a detailed biological display showing human neurological structures. Look at their brain chemistry. They can literally switch between protective and aggressive modes instantly based on threat assessment. When they perceive something as helpless or innocent, their nurturing instincts are stronger than those of any other known species. When they perceive a threat to their protected group, they become killing machines with no capacity for mercy or negotiation. General Korksvar leaned forward with interest. Are you suggesting they can be negotiated with? Not negotiated with, Zexhai corrected, but they could be befriended. The key is understanding their protection hierarchy. Humans will die for their children, kill for their families, fight wars for their tribes, and commit genocide for their species. But if you can get yourself classified as pack member or protected innocent, they'll extend that same fanatical loyalty to you. How do we achieve that classification? Kethvar asked. We stop being threats and start being vulnerable, Zexhai replied. We show them our children, our sick, our elderly. We demonstrate that we need protection rather than pose danger. We appeal to their nurturing instincts instead of triggering their threat responses. You're asking the galactic community to submit to a species we discovered 3 days ago? General Korksvar's voice carried disbelief and outrage. I'm asking us to survive, Zexhai said bluntly, because the alternative is extinction. My projections show that if current hostilities continue, humans will have eliminated every major galactic civilization within 50 years. They're not doing it out of malice. They're doing it because they consider us threats that need to be removed for the safety of their protected species. She activated a final display showing human population projections. They reproduce faster than any spacefaring species on record. Their ships are being constructed at rates that should be economically impossible. Their technology advances at a pace that violates everything we know about research and development timelines. They're not just a military threat. They're an evolutionary one. Within a century, they'll outnumber every other sapient species combined. Within 2 centuries, they'll have the industrial capacity to restructure the galaxy according to their preferences. We can either be part of their protected group by then, or we can be eliminated as obstacles to their expansion. Ambassador Kethvar stood slowly, his scaled face showing the weight of decision. Dr. Zexhai, you're recommending that the entire galactic community surrender to a species we've known for less than a week. I'm recommending that we adapt to the new reality before it's too late, she replied. Humans aren't going away. They're not going to be contained. They're not going to be reasoned with according to our traditional diplomatic frameworks. They're apex predators who have achieved spaceflight, and every other species in the galaxy is now prey unless we can convince them we're allies. The chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed the implications. Finally, Counselor Ythera spoke. What exactly are you proposing? Zexhai took a deep breath before answering. We make first contact on their terms. We approach them not as equals or superiors, but as potential friends seeking protection. We show them our vulnerabilities instead of our strengths. We ask for their help instead of offering our own. And if they refuse? General Korksvar asked. Then we run, Zexhai said simply. We evacuate every world within 500 light-years of human space, and hope they're content to let us exist on the far side of the galaxy. And if they're not content with that, Zexhai looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization, species that had ruled the stars for millennia, that had built wonders beyond imagination, that had considered themselves the height of evolutionary achievement. Then we pray that when they finish reshaping the galaxy, they remember us fondly enough to preserve a few museums. The vote to attempt peaceful contact with humanity passed by the narrowest possible margin. As delegates filed out of the chamber to prepare for what might be the most important diplomatic mission in galactic history, Zexhai remained behind, staring at the tactical display showing human expansion. She wondered if they were already too late. The diplomatic vessel Harmony's Dream drifted in empty space at the coordinates Dr. Zexhai had calculated would intersect with human expansion routes. Ambassador Kethvar stood on the bridge, his 4 clawed hands trembling slightly as he reviewed the unprecedented first contact protocols they had developed. Remember, he addressed his mixed-species crew, we approach as supplicants, not equals. We show vulnerability, not strength. We ask for protection, not alliance. The words felt like poison in his mouth. In 3 centuries of diplomatic service, Kethvar had never imagined a scenario where the galaxy's most advanced civilizations would need to beg for mercy from a species that had achieved spaceflight only decades ago. Contact, announced Sensor Operator Trill X, her crystalline form chiming with excitement and terror. Human vessel approaching from Vector 7 Mark III. Estimated arrival in 40 minutes. Begin broadcasting the prepared message on all frequencies, Kethvar ordered. And activate the civilian identification protocols. The Harmony's Dream powered down all weapons systems, opened all cargo bays for inspection, and began transmitting everything from children's artwork to medical records of their sick and elderly. If Dr. Zexhai's analysis was correct, this display of vulnerability would trigger human protective instincts rather than aggressive ones. As the human ship approached, Kethvar found himself studying the alien vessel with fascination and dread. Unlike the elegant designs favored by most galactic civilizations, the human craft looked purely functional. All angles and armor plating, with weapon ports that had clearly been designed for efficiency rather than aesthetics. Incoming transmission, reported Communications Officer Yenthdar. They're responding to our message. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a human face that seemed simultaneously young and ancient. The being had soft features that suggested a peaceful nature, but eyes that held a depth of experience that made Kethvar's scales itch with unease. This is Captain Maria Santos of the UES Protector, the human said, her voice carrying an accent that their translators couldn't quite identify. We received your distress call requesting protection and assistance. Are you under immediate threat? Kethvar felt a moment of confusion before realizing that the humans had interpreted their vulnerability display as a genuine distress signal. It was exactly the response Dr. Zexhai had predicted. Captain Santos, I am Ambassador Kethvar of the Galactic Council. We come seeking peaceful contact with your species and to request your protection for our civilizations. The human's expression shifted subtly, and Kethvar recognized the look of someone rapidly reassessing a situation. Ambassador, are you saying your government is requesting human protection? From what threat? From you. Kethvar replied honestly. Our intelligence suggests that humanity considers the Galactic Council a hostile force due to our historical surveillance and non-interference policies. We wish to avoid conflict and seek integration into your protection protocols. Silence stretched across the communication channel for nearly 30 seconds. When Captain Santos spoke again, her voice carried a note of disbelief. You're asking us to become your protectors because you're afraid we'll attack you? That is correct. And you believe we would accept responsibility for protecting species that have been spying on us. Kethvar's heart hammered against his ribs as he realized the conversation was heading in a dangerous direction. We hope that you would consider our civilian populations innocent of government policy decisions. Another long pause. Then, Captain Santos did something completely unexpected. She laughed. It wasn't a cruel or mocking laugh, but one filled with genuine amusement and what sounded like relief. Ambassador, I think there's been a significant misunderstanding. May I come aboard your vessel to discuss this situation face to face? Do you want to board our ship? Personally, standard human diplomatic protocol. We prefer personal contact when possible. I'll bring a small security detail, 2 personnel, and would appreciate the same courtesy from you. Kethvar found himself agreeing before his conscious mind had fully processed the implications. Within an hour, he was standing in the Harmony's Dreams main conference room, watching 2 humans in what appeared to be ceremonial uniforms materialize from their transport beam. The humans were smaller than he had expected. Captain Santos stood barely chest-high to his own considerable frame, and her security detail looked more like scholars than warriors. They carried no visible weapons and moved with a casual grace that suggested confidence rather than aggression. Ambassador Kethvar, Captain Santos said, extending her hand in what Kethvar's cultural briefings had identified as a human greeting gesture. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I believe we have much to discuss. As they settled around the conference table, Kethvar found himself studying the human captain with growing confusion. She seemed genuinely pleased to meet him, asking questions about his species, their culture, and their needs with what appeared to be sincere interest. Captain, he finally ventured, our intelligence reports suggest that humanity has been systematically eliminating galactic surveillance posts and military installations. We assumed this meant you considered us enemies. Captain Santos nodded gravely. That's accurate, but incomplete. We've been eliminating surveillance posts and military installations operated by governments that have been watching our species die for centuries without offering assistance. We haven't attacked any civilian targets or non-military personnel. The distinction is important to your people. Absolutely critical, she replied. Human military doctrine makes a strict separation between combatants and non-combatants. We hold governments and military forces responsible for their actions, but we don't extend that responsibility to civilian populations. She leaned forward, her expression becoming more serious. Ambassador, may I ask you a personal question? Of course. When your government was watching humanity develop, watching us struggle through wars and plagues and famines, did you personally advocate for intervention? Kethvar felt his scales darken with shame. I was not involved in those decisions. But if I had been, I would have followed galactic law and maintained non-interference. Why? The simple question hit him like a physical blow. Because it's always been our way. Because interference with developing species leads to dependency and stunted growth. And if following that law meant watching children die of diseases you could easily cure, Kethvar found himself unable to answer. The human's question cut to the heart of moral assumptions he had never questioned. Ambassador, Captain Santos continued gently, we don't hold you personally responsible for policies you didn't make. But we do hold your governments responsible for choosing law over life. That's why we've been targeting government and military installations. What do you want from us? Kethvar asked. Honestly, we want you to be better than you've been. She gestured toward the displays, showing galactic civilization. You represent species with incredible knowledge, amazing cultures, and technologies that could benefit everyone in the galaxy. But Your governments have been content to watch suffering they could prevent because it was more convenient than getting involved. So you're not planning to exterminate us? Captain Santos looked genuinely shocked. Exterminate? Ambassador, we're hoping to learn from you. Humanity is incredibly young compared to galactic civilization. We have so much to discover, so many problems to solve, so many ways we could help each other. But the destroyed fleets, the eliminated outposts, were government and military targets that posed direct threats to human security, she interrupted firmly. We don't make war on civilians. Ever. Kethvar felt a surge of hope that was immediately tempered by concern. But what about species that refuse to meet your standards? That continue following traditional galactic protocols? The change in Captain Santos was immediate and chilling. Her pleasant expression became cold and calculating, and suddenly, Kethvar could see the apex predator that Dr. Zexai's research had identified. Governments that choose to maintain policies that result in preventable deaths will be removed, she said in a voice that carried absolute certainty. Species that continue to operate surveillance programs against humanity or our protected allies will be eliminated. Military forces that threaten human civilians or our friends will be destroyed. And if civilian populations support such governments, then they'll need new governments, Captain Santos replied. We don't blame civilians for the decisions of their leaders, but we won't tolerate leaders who harm innocents through action or inaction. The implications hit Kethvar like a meteor strike. Humanity wasn't planning genocide. They were planning regime change on a galactic scale. They intended to restructure civilization itself according to their moral framework. Captain, you're talking about overthrowing every major government in the galaxy. Only the ones that need overthrowing, she replied calmly. Species that demonstrate genuine commitment to protecting innocent life and preventing unnecessary suffering will find humans to be valuable allies. Those that don't, she shrugged. We have a saying, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Kethvar realized that Dr. Zexai had been wrong about one crucial detail. Humans weren't interested in submission or surrender from galactic civilization. They were interested in conversion. What would you need to see from the Galactic Council to consider us allies rather than problems? He asked. Captain Santos smiled, and suddenly she looked young and hopeful again. Immediate implementation of intervention protocols for any species facing existential threats. Medical assistance for any civilization dealing with preventable diseases. Food distribution networks for populations facing famine. Basically, we want you to start acting like the advanced, enlightened civilizations you claim to be. And if we do this, then you'll have the full protection and cooperation of humanity. We'll share our technology, our knowledge, our resources. We'll help you solve problems you've been struggling with for centuries. We'll explore the galaxy together and build something amazing. And if we don't, the Predator returned to Captain Santos's eyes. Then you'll discover why evolution made humans very, very good at removing obstacles. As the meeting concluded and the humans returned to their ship, Kethvar found himself facing a choice that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. Humanity was offering alliance and partnership, but only on their terms and according to their moral standards. The alternative was extinction not through malice, but through the methodical elimination of governments that failed to meet human expectations of civilized behavior. As he prepared his report to the Galactic Council, Kethvar realized that the age of traditional galactic civilization was ending. The only question was whether it would end through transformation or destruction. Either way, humanity would reshape the galaxy according to their vision of how civilized beings should behave. The rest of the galaxy could choose to be part of that vision or be removed as obstacles to it. The apex predators of the galaxy had revealed themselves, and they came bearing gifts of friendship to those wise enough to accept them. 5 years had passed since first contact, and the galaxy was unrecognizable. Ambassador Kethvar stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, a massive orbital platform that had become the new center of galactic civilization. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he watched human and alien ships working together in perfect coordination, their crews representing over 40 different species that had chosen transformation over destruction. Hard to believe it's only been 5 years, said Dr. Zexhai, joining him at the observation window. Her research had made her something of a celebrity among the species that had survived humanity's restructuring of galactic civilization. Sometimes it feels like 5 centuries, Kethvar replied, watching a human heavy lifter assist a serene Republic vessel with repairs. Other times it feels like yesterday that we were terrified they would exterminate us all. They did exterminate some of us, Zexhai reminded him quietly. It was true. 17 major galactic governments had refused humanity's demands for immediate humanitarian intervention protocols. The hegemony had declared war, confident that their superior numbers and millennia of military experience would overwhelm the young human fleet. The Dominion Collective had attempted to form an anti-human alliance, believing they could contain the threat through traditional diplomatic and military means. All of them had been systematically eliminated within 18 months. But the humans had kept their word about civilians. When the hegemony capital fell, human Marines had spent weeks evacuating non-combatants and providing medical care to the wounded. When Dominion worlds surrendered, they found themselves under new management, but with improved living conditions and expanded rights. The species that had chosen cooperation over conflict had prospered beyond their wildest dreams. Dr. Zexhai called a familiar voice. They turned to see Captain Maria Santos approaching, now wearing the insignia of Admiral and Director of Galactic Integration. Ambassador Kethvar, I'm glad you could both make it to today's ceremony. Today marked the 5th anniversary of what historians were already calling the transition, the point at which humanity had officially assumed responsibility for galactic civilization. The ceremony would commemorate both the species that had been lost and the new golden age that had emerged from the chaos. Admiral Santos, Kethvar said, still marveling at how young humans looked even after years of experience. The integration reports show remarkable progress. Remarkable is one word for it, Santos replied with a smile. Miraculous might be more accurate. When we started this process, I never imagined we'd see such rapid transformation. She gestured toward a holographic display showing galactic statistics. The numbers told an incredible story of change and growth. Preventable death from disease down 94%. Famine eliminated on over 3,000 worlds. Interspecies conflicts reduced to near zero. Scientific advancement accelerated by an average of 400% across all participating civilizations. The keyword being participating, Zexhai observed. Santos nodded soberly. Yes. We lost 17 species to their government stubbornness. But we saved billions of individual lives in the process. It was the dark side of humanity's transformation of the galaxy. They had meant what they said about protecting innocent life, and they had followed through with terrifying efficiency. Governments that continued policies resulting in preventable deaths had been replaced, sometimes through negotiation, sometimes through force. The Drakmarian Empire's leadership had been eliminated overnight when they refused to end their slave trade. The corporate syndicate had been dismantled when they wouldn't stop exploiting primitive worlds for resources. The Iron Compact had been destroyed when they attempted to use biological weapons against human civilian targets. In each case, the human response had been swift, decisive, and absolutely final. Admiral Kethvar said carefully, there are still species in the outer rim that haven't made contact with human expansion. What happens when you encounter civilizations that have never heard of your requirements? Same as always, Santos replied. We make contact, explain our expectations, offer assistance, and alliance. If they agree to protect innocent life and prevent unnecessary suffering, they become part of the galactic community. If they don't, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew what happened to species that failed humanity's moral tests. Doesn't that concern you? Zexhai asked. That you're essentially forcing your value system on the entire galaxy? Santos was quiet for a long moment, watching the activity outside the station. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of difficult decisions and sleepless nights. Dr. Zexhai, 5 years ago we found a galaxy where advanced civilizations watched children die rather than share medicine, where slave trades operated openly while enlightened species looked the other way because it wasn't their business, where military powers committed genocide and called it population management. She turned to face them both, and they could see the determination that had driven humanity to reshape civilization itself. If forcing our value system on the galaxy means children don't die of preventable diseases, then, yes, we'll force our values on everyone. If imposing our moral framework means ending slavery and genocide, then we'll impose it without apology. But what if you're wrong? HFY. What if there are situations where non-interference really is the better choice? What if there are cultures that prefer to handle their own problems, even if it means more suffering in the short term? Then they can make that argument to us and try to convince us, Santos replied. But they'll need to provide very compelling reasons why innocence should suffer for the sake of cultural autonomy. And I have to warn you, humans are not easily convinced that suffering is ever necessary when alternatives exist. A chime sounded throughout the station, signaling the beginning of the anniversary ceremony. As they made their way to the main assembly hall, Kethvar found himself reflecting on the incredible transformation he had witnessed. The hall was filled with representatives from dozens of species, all working together on projects that would have been impossible under the old galactic order. Medical teams were sharing treatments that had eliminated diseases that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. Agricultural specialists had ended famine on worlds that had struggled with food scarcity for centuries. Engineers were collaborating on infrastructure projects that connected civilizations in ways never before imagined. But it wasn't just the practical improvements that amazed him. The galaxy had become more peaceful, more cooperative, more unified than at any time in recorded history. Species that had barely tolerated each other were now close allies, working together toward common goals. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications, Admiral Santos announced from the podium, today we commemorate 5 years of galactic cooperation and remember those we lost along the way. The ceremony began with a moment of silence for the species that had chosen destruction over transformation. Despite everything they had done, humans still mourned their enemies. It was perhaps the most alien thing about them, their capacity to feel genuine sorrow for those they had been forced to destroy. 5 years ago, Santos continued, humanity encountered a galaxy that had forgotten what civilization really means. Today, we stand together as true citizens of a universe where every sapient being has value, where every child has a chance at a future, where every species can contribute to our collective growth. She activated a display showing current galactic statistics compared to those from before human contact. The improvements were staggering, not just in technological advancement, but in quality of life, peace, and cooperation across all participating civilizations. But we must never forget that this transformation came at a cost, Santos said, her voice becoming solemn. We lost 17 civilizations because their governments chose pride over wisdom, tradition over compassion. Those losses weigh heavily on every human soul. Yet from those losses came salvation for billions. Children who would have died now live. Slaves who would have suffered are free. Wars that would have raged have been prevented. We honor the dead by ensuring their sacrifice leads to a better galaxy for all. The ceremony continued with presentations from various species about how integration with humanity had affected their civilizations. The reports were universally positive: improved healthcare, better education, expanded rights, increased prosperity. But Ketvar noticed something interesting in the presentations. While every species praised humanity's contributions, none of them talked about human dominance or rule. Humans had indeed taken responsibility for galactic civilization, but they had done so as protectors and partners rather than as conquerors. Admiral, he asked during the reception following the ceremony, I noticed that humans hold very few direct leadership positions in galactic government. Why is that? Santos smiled and gestured around the room, where human and alien representatives work together with easy familiarity. Because we don't want to rule the galaxy, Ambassador. We want to protect it. There's a significant difference. I'm not sure I understand. Humans excel at identifying and eliminating threats, she explained. We're very good at making hard decisions and enforcing necessary changes. But we're not necessarily the best at day-to-day governance or cultural management. That's where our partners excel. She pointed toward a group of Serene Republic representatives working with human engineers on a terraforming project. The serene have wisdom we lack. The Zephyrians have artistic sensibilities we can barely comprehend. The collective has logical processing capabilities that complement our intuitive decision-making. So you see yourselves as guardians rather than rulers? Exactly. We provide security, enforcement, and strategic direction when necessary. But the actual business of civilization, art, culture, trade, exploration, research, that's a collaborative effort where every species contributes their strengths. As the evening continued, Kethvar found himself talking with representatives from across the galaxy. The conversations were remarkable not just for their content, but for their tone. These beings spoke of the future with optimism and excitement that had been absent from galactic discourse for centuries. "Ambassador," said Counselor Yathera, approaching with a drink that would have been toxic to most species, but was perfectly safe for his biology, "I wanted to thank you personally for your courage 5 years ago." "My courage? Your recommendation that we approach humanity as supplicants rather than equals. If we had followed traditional diplomatic protocols, my species would likely be extinct." It was true. The species that had survived and thrived were those that had quickly understood humanity's moral framework and adapted to it. Those that had insisted on maintaining traditional galactic power structures had been swept aside. "I was just following Dr. Zexhi's research," Kethvar replied modestly. "Research that saved billions of lives," Yathera said. "The humans were exactly what you predicted, apex predators with an absolute commitment to protecting those they consider innocent. Learning to be innocent in their eyes was the key to survival." As the ceremony wound down and delegates began returning to their various worlds and stations, Kethvar found himself alone with Admiral Santos on the observation deck where the evening had begun. "Admiral, may I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. Do you ever regret the path humanity chose? The violence, the forced changes, the lost civilizations?" Santos was quiet for a long time, staring out at the bustling activity of the station. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of difficult choices and their consequences. "Ambassador, every human in the fleet carries the weight of those decisions. We remember every ship we destroyed, every government we toppled, every life that was lost. We honor them in our databases and mourn them in our ceremonies. But we don't regret them, because for every life we took in combat, we saved hundreds through intervention. For every government we destroyed, we freed millions from oppression. For every civilization we ended, we created opportunities for dozens more to flourish." She turned to face him, and in her eyes he saw both the compassion and the terrible determination that defined humanity. "The galaxy is a better place than it was 5 years ago. Not perfect, but better. Children are living who would have died. People are free who would have been enslaved. Species are cooperating who would have been at war. And if you encounter another species in the future that refuses to meet your standards, then we'll do what we've always done," Santos replied simply. "We'll give them every opportunity to choose cooperation over conflict. We'll offer assistance, partnership, and friendship. But if they choose to harm innocents or maintain systems that cause unnecessary suffering." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Everyone in the galaxy knew what humanity did to those who failed their moral tests. As Kethvar prepared to leave Unity Station and return to his homeworld, he reflected on the incredible transformation he had witnessed. Humanity had indeed revealed themselves as the apex predators of the galaxy. But they had used that position not to dominate or exploit, but to protect and nurture. The galaxy was no longer ruled by ancient traditions or convenient inaction. It was guided by a simple principle that humanity had enforced with absolute determination. If you have the power to prevent suffering, you have the obligation to do so. Those who embraced that principle found themselves welcomed into a galactic civilization more prosperous and peaceful than any in recorded history. Those who rejected it found themselves removed as obstacles to progress. It wasn't the galaxy he had grown up in, but as he watched children of dozens of different species playing together in the station's parks, and as he saw former enemies working side by side on projects that would benefit everyone, Kethvar had to admit it was a much better galaxy. Humanity had kept their promise. They had indeed proven themselves to be the apex predators of the galaxy, and that it turned out was exactly what the galaxy had needed all along.